Welcome to TYT's debate coverage of the, of course, Democratic debate happening, of course, on a weekend, and to make matters worse, on a Sunday night when, of course, no one's watching. But it doesn't matter. We're still going to do coverage of it, and not only are we going to do coverage live from our studio here in Los Angeles, we're also going to cut to John Iadarola, Michael Shure, and our very own reporter, Jordan Chariton, at the debate. So let me know when it's safe to cut away to them or toss to them, because I do have a few questions. But before I get to that, Becca Frucht is here in studio, hosting along with me, holding it down.
Holding it down, ladies here in Los Angeles.
Becca, how are you feeling about this? Like, what are you looking forward to? What are your hopes?
What are my hopes and dreams? I'm trying to come fresh to this debate, you know, and really, because, you know, early on, I have to say I was sort of like blanket Hillary supporter. I just assumed that's who I would be voting for in 2016. And Bernie has really changed a lot of my opinions. So I'm excited to see the two of them spar, especially considering all of the momentum Bernie has right now. I mean, everybody is talking about the meltdown of the Hillary Clinton campaign.
Yes.
And she is a master debater. So if she comes out swinging, it'll be really interesting.
Master debater, my two favorite words combined in the same sentence. Yes, she is a master debater. Look, Hillary's strength is that she remains calm in any and all situations. Someone can be attacking her in the most terrible way imaginable, and she keeps her cool. Now, the reason why the Hillary campaign is kind of freaking out a little bit is because Bernie Sanders is taking the lead so far in New Hampshire and Iowa. They're basically head-to-head when it comes to Iowa, but it's looking good for Bernie. Hillary knows that, and so you're going to see a little bit of a difference in this debate compared to the other Democratic debates. Hillary's going to be a little more aggressive.
Well, we've already seen the temperature raise in terms of the mudslinging vibes, and I think Hillary's been pretty quiet on that front, and, you know, she's enlisted her daughter, Chelsea Clinton, has been out there talking about health care. So that's been something we've seen just as an initial reaction to the polls. So I'm interested to see, again, what the tone of this debate is, how you know, civil it is. I hope it's civil. I hope we engage in some substantive discussions. And, you know, I mean, Hillary's really good with a line. I mean, I remember the last debate, you know, may the force be with you. That was smart. That was some, but it's not, again, that's not like a real meaningful phrase. It's not, it's just, she's definitely playing to the zeitgeist.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing that I think a lot of people are turned off to is the fact that Hillary is perceived as a career politician. She is a career politician. And look, so is Bernie. Bernie's been a career politician as well, but he obviously seems to be a lot more principled. The number one thing that he's running on, his platform, is based on getting money out of politics, and a lot of people are turned on by that message. So Hillary knows that. Hillary knows that he's really gaining popularity, and regardless of how many debates they host on nights that no one's watching, Bernie is getting the word out there about his campaign.
Because it's a grassroots movement. He's not using the traditional outlets for fundraising. He's not using the traditional platforms. You know, to get his message out there. So I think it's difficult because for Hillary, it's fighting a foe who is on a totally different, it's like they're on different playing fields. Right?
Well, that is really interesting. And keep in mind that the one thing that Hillary continuously holds on to is Bernie's record on gun control. Because she feels that he's not progressive enough. All right, so let's go ahead and toss to the boys in South Carolina. Let's go ahead and talk to them, see what the atmosphere is like in South Carolina, what they've experienced. John, Michael Shure, Jordan, thank you for joining us.
How's it going, Anna?
Hey, pretty good. Oh, look at you guys.
We're excited to talk to you.
Look at you guys looking all fancy and shit.
Yeah, well, you know, we're trying and everything.
Can Anna Kasparian see me?
Yes, I can see you.
I think she can, yeah.
You're looking,
hi, Anna Kasparian.
You're looking
Jordan,
quite dapper.
saying hi to you as well.
Hey, Anna.
Hi. All right, so give me a quick summary of what you guys have experienced and noticed today. Maybe some predictions as well.
You want to start off?
Do I want to start off? I mean, predictions. You know, here's what I'm predicting. I'm predicting that, you know, Bernie Sanders released his health plan today, Anna. So they're definitely going to talk about that. Hillary Clinton's brushing up on it as we speak. And a couple of things about it. You know, one of the things that people thought when he said Medicare for all is that it would, you know, one of the criticisms from the Clinton campaign would be that it would put an unfair tax on the middle class. What he's saying is that it's going to bring the top marginal tax rate to 50%. It's also going to add healthcare premiums, which a lot of people thought previously Sanders wouldn't have in there. And then it's going to, there will be a payroll tax increase. So what this does is it dances around the middle class because it makes Hillary Clinton right, but Bernie Sanders can then say, well, 50% top marginal tax rate will cover that.
Yeah.
However, there is a way for Hillary Clinton to play on this for electability because she could go and say, hey, listen, we're not going to win a general election with a guy proposing a 50% top marginal tax rate. Not because it's just wealthy people who are undecided or may come to Clinton, but there are people that see taxation as too high in general and they stay away from that. She's probably going to play on electability. If not tonight, she's going to do it over the next week or so.
And you think they either won't get or won't really care if it doesn't personally impact them?
Right. I mean, I think probably. I mean, in a Democratic primary, obviously less dangerous. She's going to have answers for that. It helps him with this crowd, certainly, when he says 50% top marginal tax rate. But
it's a number that stands out. Like you hear it, and
it stands out. But also the other part of it is there are healthcare premiums involved here.
Yeah.
The sexiest part about what Bernie Sanders has been saying is that there are no, or people have been presuming he's going to say, is that there are no healthcare premiums. So it's not really Medicare for all.
The sexy part is everybody's covered.
Well, that's
healthcare
for all. That's right. Right. You're 100% right.
He's going to say, yes, you're paying more in taxes, but I'm going to show you that once you take out the $6,000 per year you were spending on health insurance, you are making money off of this. Which is a little bit harder to...
At the end of the day, we're sitting here arguing what the sexiest part of Bernie Sanders is. So that's
which is incredible.
I want to start a show just based on that. What's your prediction?
Well, I think the sexiest part to many, and Sanders is going to say the top rate is going to be 52%. A lot of people have been slamming him, saying, oh, he might tax you at 90%.
Yeah.
Now we know it's going to be 52%. I also think tonight you might see Sanders, since basically nobody will be watching, really be a little bit more aggressive so we could get in the cycle tomorrow. Because I think with Sanders, he always kind of eloquently, critiques Secretary Clinton. I think you might see a little bit more aggressive tonight just because of what the Sanders campaign has endured this week.
Yeah.
Suggesting he releases medical records and these kinds of things. I think you might see a more feisty Bernie today, which I think is going to play well.
I think that's a possibility.
How much more feisty can Bernie Sanders be, though? Honestly,
he's feisty in an internal against, the economic elites, the political elites.
But one of the first adjectives you would use about him is feisty.
Yeah, right? His hair, certainly. I somewhat disagree. I think that he might end up doing that, but I think that especially considering one of the big changes for this debate than for the other one, I mean, she had started some of her critiques of his gun policy for the most part, but many of the attacks that we've been focusing on all week are new. And so I think she's going to be trotting those out. It's a little bit harder now that he's released his plan. He undercut her a little bit on that. She'll shift it over to critiquing the numbers, as I think you're saying. But I think that she is going to be doing a lot of that, and I think he is going to be forced to play defense. Maybe he can combine that with a couple of punches at her, but I don't see him doing that. I hope to see it, but I don't think I will.
It's not really Bernie's style to do that, And I think you hit the nail on the head, John. Bernie attacks, but he's really bad at attacking Hillary specifically. He's going after the corporations, he's going after the big banks, he's going after the status quo, but he's not an aggressive debater. And I think that Hillary is now at a point where she feels threatened by Bernie, at least to some extent, which is why she attacked him on Jake Tapper's show today and basically called out his record on gun control.
But I think he is an aggressive debater. I think that the things on which they disagree and that there is a divide are not that many. I mean, that's the problem. So I think that his passions about debating her is that they agree on so much. When you cut through all of the personality and the demeanor and the calmness and the feistiness, I think he's feisty.
Yes.
That there is so much agreement on what they are talking about that it's very difficult to debate someone that way.
Yeah.
Right.
I slightly disagree because I think they agree on so much now, but Bernie's never turned to her and said, over your career, 4 out of your top 10 donors are big banks, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan. He's never really put it out there in specifics when she's talking about that, I was the 9/11 senator, these kinds of things. If he comes at her specifically, what is your credibility on this? You're being bankrolled by these people.
Right, but if she were, anyway, there's a longer argument to have about it. It's not an unfair remark to make, right? But the political reality of it is that everyone's bankrolled by these because of our money in politics situation right now. You cannot run for president without a bit of bankroll. And listen, if Bernie Sanders wins the nomination, he's going to be getting money from wealthy people, or he's going to lose, which I think he would do anyway if he got the nomination. But that remains to be seen. But I do think that they're on policy, general policy, there's so much that's alike that getting into a you're not going to see Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz tonight. You're not going to see Chris Christie and Marco Rubio tonight. You're not going to see that kind of difference.
You could talk about breaking up the big banks. You could talk about Glass-Steagall. I mean, there are some things, and she will bring up
there you've hit on it. But you guys keep going to that. Keep going.
So,
keep going. Right?
Clinton, wait, hold on. I think Anna's trying to cut in for a second.
Yeah, sorry guys. I just wanted to bring up a quick Wall Street Journal poll that I thought was really interesting. So I know that Hillary is very likely to attack Bernie's electability, especially in a general election, and that's going to scare a lot of Democrats because Democrats don't want to lose the general election. But there was a Wall Street Journal poll that indicated that in a general election between Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders would win at 54%, Donald Trump at 39%. Michael, what do you think about that? I'm really curious to see what your perspective.
I never like those polls. I don't like national polls that have her up 20 some odd. I don't believe that for a second, that she's these national polls. The polls that matter are the polls that are in Iowa, South Carolina, and New Hampshire. Head-to-head polls at this stage don't matter. I mean, listen, in 2004, today in 2004, Howard Dean was going to win the nomination. Today in 2008, by a lot, by 9.8 points, Hillary Clinton was going to win. So national, I'm talking about national polls. So those are, so Anna, there's certainly, it's seductive to look at them, read them, and think, oh, this is pretty cool. But I don't think that they matter. And when it comes to electability, I think the common sort of sense right now is that, it would be very difficult for Bernie Sanders to beat an establishment Republican, but Donald Trump is kind of a wild card, and nobody knows how to go with that.
I think it would be more fair to say we shouldn't be focusing on these head-to-head matchups if he was the one making the case for electability, but she's making the one. And so when she makes that claim, you then say, okay, what evidence do we have? And you have him beating Trump by 6 or 7 points more than she does. You have her losing to Cruz, but him beating Cruz. So to the extent that we have any evidence to address this issue, which she has raised, the evidence undercuts her claim. Well, and I agree. I mean, it's so long and so much is going to happen that
and what you're saying and what Anna's implying, that's true. I mean, of course, we don't have hard evidence, but we have history, and history shows you that when you have candidates who are perceived in the way that a gadfly, somebody who's coming in there to disrupt the establishment, like Bernie Sanders is on paper, that person does less well against another establishment. Once you get there. But that doesn't mean, I mean, listen, every Democrat would vote for Bernie Sanders. It's not like people would run away from him. It's just attracting other voters and also makes it easier, people think, for an establishment Republican to attract voters. So, and Trump Sanders, who knows? I mean, it's a coin toss.
Yeah. Anna, can I ask you a question, actually?
Sure, go ahead.
Do you think, I've been thinking all day about the expectations that we can and should have for each of the candidates, obviously each of them looking to get something different out of this particular debate, but seeing as this is the only debate that we'll have before the Iowa and I believe New Hampshire contest, do you think that—
The only Democratic debate, there's a
Democratic
Iowa,
debate, sorry, that's what I mean. That if O'Malley doesn't stand out in some significant way that I've tried to come up with examples of and I can't, for whatever reason he's polling at 2 or 4%, even though I think his debate performances lately have been perfectly adequate. Do you think that this could possibly be his last debate as a candidate for the Democratic Party?
Absolutely. I'm actually surprised that he's going to be part of this debate. I think having him be part of it is a huge waste of time. I don't even know why he hasn't dropped out yet. He's so low in polling. And look, his debate performance, understand, especially during the last debate, was perfectly fine. You're absolutely right about that. But he is the definition of vanilla. Like, he is the definition of a scripted, robotic, what you can expect from a politician. That's not to say that I disagree with him on a lot of policy ideas. I just feel like his performance is very traditional, very stereotypical of a politician. And obviously Hillary has a little bit of that in her as well, which is what turns a lot of young voters off to her, I think. So I think that if he was smart, he would drop out after this debate.
What do you think, Jordan? Do you think this could be his last debate? Or do you think he has something in him that he'll show now?
I've been covering South Carolina all this week, so I've seen O'Malley speak a few times. I mean, for whatever reason, he's in it to win it. I think he thinks he's going to win, or he wants to be vice president. Who knows? But I don't see him dropping out. I think he'd probably drop out after New Hampshire.
Yeah. What do you think? Am I being presumptuous?
No, I think he goes after Iowa. I don't think. Yeah.
You think he gets 1%?
Or whatever he gets there, and that's it. I mean, if he wants to play the John Edwards role, he's not doing it as well as John Edwards did at that time. So
his hair's not as nice.
But actually, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, he's got great hair. I like his hair.
He does have great hair. Speaking of that, Johnny, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Now, Johnny, I've noticed that your socks don't match your shirt as well as Michael's do. In fact, he matches the stripe in his tie. Now, do you see that as at a disadvantage to you? Is that a rookie mistake? This is your first... It's kind of a rookie mistake, your first live coverage of a debate. So what do you say?
I mean, can we even see his socks?
Can I just say, you sound weird now. You sound
weird.
You sound awful.
Yeah, look, I think I'm not going to lie. It's a gaffe. Is it one I can recover from? I'm hoping that I will be the Joe Biden of socks. And people take it as like a quirky sort of sock thing. That's really the only chance I have at this point.
I mean, that's the thing. If I was going to go, Michael had already tipped me off to this. He's like, make sure you bring the right socks because the camera catches your socks. And I was like, thanks for that. And that's a profession.
From here, or would they have to do it in LA?
What's that? I missed that.
All right, so tell me what the atmosphere is like over there. Have you guys experienced anything interesting or fun, anything worth reporting about?
Well, here's what I will tell you. I've been to every Democratic. Well, no, I missed the Manchester one. So I've been to, but that's the only debate I've missed of all the debates this year.
What socks did you wear there?
The socks that I wore, Jimmy. Let me check.
Jimmy keeping us on topic.
Jimmy, I'll be right back.
Okay.
It's a little bit. There's a lot of activity outside. It's a little bit more vibrant here than it has been for any of the Democratic debates. I think also because the debate is happening about 100 yards from where we are, and it's usually 7 buildings away from where we are. So I think that probably contributes to it. A lot of Bernie and Hillary supporters outside. Another interesting thing to tell you is that we're about, 3 football fields away from the Mother Emanuel AME Church, where the horrific shooting happened in June. And this morning I went to services there, and so here, there's an interesting story. Bernie Sanders was there. Eric Holder was seated in the same pew as he was, and Eric Holder last week endorsed Hillary Clinton. And the pastor at a certain point introduced all the guests who were there. I wasn't there as press, I just went. And the woman next to me with whom I'd been talking, he introduces, and it's Sabrina Fulton, who was Trayvon Martin's mom.
Wow.
And so I was sitting next to her the whole time, and Sabrina Fulton had just endorsed Hillary Clinton as well. And so there was, Bernie Sanders was obviously received graciously, and it was very strategic for him to be there. Guns were talked about by the pastor, by Holder, by Sabrina Fulton, and Bernie Sanders was there. But that's interesting. It's right down the block, and it's a moving thing to see.
I'd like to add in something a little less gracious. As I was covering the pre-debate activities outside, across the street were actually Benghazi Lives Matter protesters, pretty much a feet or two near the church. So I asked them, do you think it's appropriate to be in front of a church that 9 people got killed at? Talking about Benghazi Lives Matter, kind of a play on Black Lives Matter. They feigned ignorance. They didn't even realize they were in front of the church.
That's amazing. Well,
Benghazi's out full force.
It doesn't surprise me that they'd be ignorant about that. I mean, especially considering what they're, protesting about. All right, so tell me more. So, Michael, we haven't really talked too much about, your endorsement, which candidate you're leaning in favor of. I know that you were a staunch Hillary supporter, when she ran.
He's holding that torch for Chafee still.
It was a long time ago. Before Anna, I was neutral.
You were neutral. Like, are you neutral in this election, or
until the end of April, when my network goes out of business, I'm absolutely neutral.
Fair enough.
So yes, I'm neutral, Anna. But look to my past, and you'll see a little bit of the present. I think.
Okay.
That's my
Michael.
So Michael, cut in there. They have this this big crowd outside with protesters, supporters for Hillary and for Bernie, and it looked like they were roughly the same numbers. There was a good portion of each, and they had blanketed the lawns with signs. And I looked around, and I really tried to find a single O'Malley sign, and there wasn't one. I wonder Is that a sign that he's moved all of his campaign infrastructure to New Hampshire, maybe? Like that's where he's going to make his stand?
You know, he's been in Iowa a lot. I mean, I think you've seen him down here, but he spent a lot of time in Iowa. I do think that's going to be his last stand. I don't see how he goes beyond that. Just a side note here, Bernie Sanders, you just saw walking into the venue and shaking Debbie Wasserman Schultz's hand.
Oh,
John spoke to Debbie Wasserman Schultz. That had
Michael,
been awkward.
I think that's the Muppet that plays the piano. That's not Debbie.
How was
right, well, Elmo shook her hand, it turns out.
How was John?
Sorry,
how was
Anna, what were you saying?
John's? I just wanted to ask you how your discussion with her was, especially considering how critical we've been of her.
Yeah, well, thankfully she didn't see any of those videos beforehand.
Good.
So it was very rushed, and I only had time to ask her a few questions, and so I really tried to drill down into the lack of debates and the scheduling of the debates, and she's been repeating the line all day that, well, of course, this one had to be on a weekend because it's South Carolina, it's MLK Day soon, and all that. I didn't find that to be the most persuasive argument, but it was the lack of debates. And when you combine that, I was telling Michael this earlier, when you combine, well, you know, we're limited by what the TV networks will do. They just won't put us on more often. And then you immediately say, we're getting record ratings, we're blowing the roof off with the ratings. Well, then you take that to the networks and you schedule more debates.
Right.
And so I tried to get her to crack at least a little bit under that. I even led in a very, I think, diplomatic way. I said, let's say I'm a big Hillary supporter, and I say Hillary's a great debater. I want to see her debate. I want the country to see her debate. Don't you want to see her debate? But she was unflappable. At least I couldn't flap.
Can I ask Michael a question? Can I ask Michael a question? Michael, so when your network goes off the air, how much do you think that will help your ratings?
Here's the thing, Jimmy. There'll be like 11 fewer people that get to see me every day. Is that what you're getting at, Jimmy?
I don't know. I don't know anything.
Oh,
all right. I know
Lord.
that. I've known that for years.
I'm revealing that.
So, Jimmy, I have a question for you. Do you think that us not being in the studio with you, do you think that will help you to win the Twitter war tonight? Or do you think your odds are about the same as usual?
Damn.
I think
shots fired.
I think I will probably crush you tonight.
Oh.
Okay, well, I will be looking at those numbers. We'll see.
What's this Twitter war?
So one of our favorite hobbies now is when we're watching the debates, we live tweet them.
Right.
And the goal is to get the most retweets on a single tweet out of the night.
Oh, that's pretty great.
Yeah.
So I might get in the game tonight.
You might?
Yeah,
Yeah,
at Jordan Chariton.
I retweeted last
Bring
night
it.
one of Bernie's infographics showing him against the different Republicans, beating them by a bunch, and that got a lot. And Jimmy once had I'm sure he had something.
I only, your graphic that someone else made did get retweeted a lot. I actually wrote a joke that
I
actually.
totally understand what I was doing.
Yes. Well, the GOP says that Obama's soft on terrorism, Bin Laden, unavailable for comment, got 1,200 retweets. That's
okay, well, then
that's not a real number.
Oh, good. Well, I'm really excited about this Twitter pissing match.
Yeah.
I said that's not a real number.
Can't
So
wait.
I know that we only have just a couple of more minutes. Is there anything in particular that we're hoping to see out of this that we might not expect to, but that probably not Martin O'Malley, but especially Hillary and Bernie, that they can say to perhaps sway those of us who are becoming increasingly strident in our support of one candidate? Is there anything that could be said?
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's not one kind of eureka moment that I can even imagine happening here unless, Martin O'Malley comes up and says, I've spoken with the FBI, and in fact, they're going to start an investigation, and that's that. I mean, there has to be that kind of breaking news, which, in point of fact, you can talk about it in jest, but that's probably why someone like Martin O'Malley is hanging around, because waiting for, and it's why John Edwards did to a certain extent too. It's why people stick around, waiting for some kind of an implosion, and to a degree, I think that's why Jeb Bush is sticking around too. To be honest, now at this point, he was going to be the front runner. People waiting for Trump to go the other way. It's not happening. So,
and for months that seemed very reasonable.
Yeah. So there would have to be breaking news that it will not happen on the platform tonight, in my opinion.
I hope this isn't the case, but I also am expecting this to be a love fest to President Obama. He's very popular among South Carolina Democrats. At the event I was at last night, Hillary Clinton had a love blanket over him.
Yeah.
Every sentence came out with President Obama.
Yeah, that's a good point. She's talking a lot about him. And one thing that we should talk about, guys, is that this is the Congressional Black Caucus debate. So the issues of race, issues that have affected the black community over the past 4 to 7 years, and this year, in 2015. I think those are the kinds of things you're going to hear about. Black Lives Matter here. You're going to hear those sorts of themes. So I think that might be interesting. I don't think you're going to see a lot of disagreement over it, but you know.
Especially with it being in Charleston, and especially with, this is South Carolina, and Bernie, obviously people are already starting to talk about his potential problem with courting minority voters.
Yeah.
So
especially black voters, very especially black voters.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's curious to me, but it's still true.
Well, Anna, I think that we actually have to dump out because the debate is about to start here, but we're going to be watching your live coverage for the next 2 hours, and then, of course, we will have our post coverage of the debate.
All right, sounds good. We'll definitely hit you guys up later after the debate's over.
It was great talking to you. I miss you.
Great talking to you, too. Miss you as well.
Great talking to you.
All right, guys.
Johnny, Michael, bro tip. See you guys later.
Jimmy, go F yourself.
Jimmy, you know, yeah.
All right, guys. So the debate's going to start shortly in less than 1 minute, according to the timer. You know, I just want to make a quick clarification of something I said to Michael early on when I tossed to him. So when I say that Bernie's not an aggressive debater, I don't mean that he's not aggressive in terms of his ideology. He's just not the type of politician that hits below the belt.
Which I applaud him for.
I applaud him for that, exactly. So, look, I think that unfortunately he is going to be playing a lot of defense because Hillary does plan on being aggressive herself and attacking him quite a bit, especially when it comes to his
and Hillary will take your knees out.
Yeah, she will. I don't see him responding in a Trump-like fashion, kind of like how Cruz was talking about New Yorkers and then Trump basically punched him in the face with 9/11. I don't see Bernie responding with any type of under-the-belt reaction like that.
No way.
Yeah.
He's going to reserve his powder for the millionaires and billionaires and Debbie Wasserman and Schultz.
Yes. Oh, look at him. He's so cute. Just looking at him, like, waving makes me love him.
He's just precious.
Well, the fact that he now is, it seems like he can win, right? Like, everybody's stopping saying
so
that.
I wonder what Bernie looks like in a debate, and we're about to find out, under the auspices of not being the complete underdog, right? I mean, this is a different dynamic we're going to experience here. So I really hope I hope he sticks it to him. I want to see Bernie, like, you know, I want to feel the burn. I feel it.
I wonder if they're going to bring, you know, the healthcare is going to come up, so I wonder if he's going to bring up, you know, all the time she congratulated him for working towards single payer, right? And then the time that she castigated Barack Obama for coming after her for advocating for single payer. So this would be, that's the thing I'm looking for if that comes up, those kind of contradictions that she's been revealed to be having, because the opposition research that the Bernie Sanders people are doing has been top notch on that, I think.
Like really smart about finding these.
Yes, that thing that contradicts what her attack.
Talking out of both sides.
Yeah, it's like, oh no, we're not contradicting your attack. You're contradicting your own attack, which is the best thing you can do.
It's just difficult because when it gets complex like that for viewers and they start getting like, you know, for the audience members and they start throwing around all these like complexities about you said this and that. I hope that it's an accessible debate. I always hope that, you know, and it just doesn't get so wonky that, you know, the people watching, which it'll be 5 who aren't watching football and who aren't like, you know, sitting around jerking off because it's a holiday weekend.
Yes. I mean, I think a lot of people are sitting around jerking off because it's a holiday weekend, which is why this debate was
so frustrating.
That's why I'm like, where am I going to fit in my jerking off? Because I have to be here.
You have to be here.
Yeah, and of course, they just sandwich you between us, and here we are. No, but I think the Hillary campaign is now, of course, really wishing they had more debates for her to show off. And, you know, I think that the strategy of playing it really quiet and trying to bury this entire, the fight they have with Bernie and I guess with O'Malley.
I mean, it's certainly, their strategy of burying Bernie's message certainly didn't work. So doing these weekend debates, maybe it worked to some extent, but Bernie's still doing really well in Iowa and New Hampshire.
So NBC came out with a poll today where he's ahead of Trump, Bernie, by 15 points. Hillary's only ahead of Trump by 10 points. This is nationally. And I say the more people get to know Bernie, the wider that margin will get.
So you're going to notice one huge difference between this debate and the debate you watched a few days ago for the Republicans. They're actually going to talk about policy. They're going to talk about policy so much that you might get a little bored, okay? Yeah. But it's important. It shows you the stark difference, the contrast between Democrats and Republicans. There's going to be a lot less emotional attacks, which you saw during the Republican debate. There are probably going to be some below-the-belt attacks, but not as many as you saw during the Republican debate. It might get a little wonky, but it's important. Let's go ahead and cut to the debate.
Hosting us here on the